Hey everyone. Hello and welcome to the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, your award-winning Reasons I'm Broke podcast. I'm Daniel, and we are live streaming for the second time ever in the podcast history. So huge thanks to everyone who ends up joining us and to you enjoying it on the other end. A couple days later, week later, the clean and edited version. Enjoy, but otherwise this is us going live right now, and I've got Millennial Mike joining me right below. Welcome back, Millennial Mike.
Good to see you. Good to see myself on your. It's weird. We haven't done video podcasts, except once before, so it's kind of cool, kind of neat, you know. So I like to see you're growing the channel.
Yeah, still learning some things. Like I had to put in your I put in a little Vero logo underneath next to your name, so I had to knock that out, and so we're slowly getting it to look nicer, which is it's a work in process. Now that we've got the audio component figured out for the most part, now we can start doing fun stuff like this. But for anyone that is new to the show, the way we format it is we go through a block of news. That's the chunk of the podcast, although this week it is a little bit lighter on the news because we are going to discuss at the very end of the show Arcane League of Legends. That's going to be the latest, one of the biggest Netflix releases. And it is going to be a spoiler discussion, which is why we're keeping it at the very end of today's podcast. And then we're also going to have the Brocap block, which is what Millennial Mike and I have been doing in the week, which is reading, playing, whatever it may be. But otherwise, let's jump right into this week's news. First off, we've got the Nintendo GameCube, as initially the purple color for it was a little bit controversial. In an interview with Video Games Chronicle, Nintendo's former Vice President of Marketing and Corporate Affairs, Perrin Kaplan, revealed that the GameCube's purple launch color was a concern. And I have a quote here from Perrin who said, quote, "We actually suggested that the purple was not the best to start with, and Japan said, no, we're going to use that. Then we pushed for black and silver because I think in the US nobody had ever really done the purple color before. It wasn't that you couldn't bring out hardware that was a different color, it was just a very female-looking color. It just didn't feel masculine, I think. I remember us being very nervous at E3 that we were going to get bad press purely based on the color," end quote. Do you remember the GameCube days, Millennial Mike? The releases?
Oh, yeah.
Were you a GameCube guy?
Oh, it's the best console. I mean, well, here let me qualify that. It's the best Nintendo console. The best console I think is the PS2.
Okay.
But no, I think I still have a purple gaming controller. Those things were durable.
They were the most comfortable controllers. I remember I had read back then you couldn't really go on YouTube and type in like first impressions GameCube. I had to read Nintendo Power and it they said that it was the most comfortable video game controller of all time. Then they had it in Toys R Us like ahead of the release of the system. You can play a demo of Star Fox Adventures I think back then, Rogue Squadron, and I remember like getting my hands on the controller, my little kid hands was like, "Oh my god, this is really the most comfortable fucking
Yeah.
controller." And yeah, like you said, they were durable too.
Yeah, yeah. The only issue, and if you played a lot of GameCube, you'd know this, is that the rubber tips, if you really use them a lot, would come off. And underneath the rubber tip was like this very hard plastic, thin plastic piece. And they would get really jagged at times. And they would be sharp. So when you'd be playing, you'd like cut yourself. You have blood on your controller. That's how you know you're a real gamer.
That's true. That's true. I never played it that much. I played a ton of GameCube, but I never had that problem. But I used to see that in like the McDonald's or Burger King consoles where they were just out in public. And yeah, that C stick was completely just a plastic nub.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So yeah, good times.
I do remember the purple color being kind of a big deal because for a long time after the GameCube released, they had trouble getting rid of that image of Nintendo consoles are for kids. And they were working really hard here in the US and North America to say, we've got Metroid Prime, we've got Resident Evil 4, look at these adult games. You can buy those too. This is not a console for kids. As they're showing off this purple controller with like a little handle
Yeah,
at the top so you can take it with
yeah.
you like a little lunchbox. Did you?
Well, in the past, I mean, in the past, like, I don't think Nintendo really necessarily, they actually always had like the pro gamer, like, oh, Nintendo has the best graphics, like back in the early Nintendo days. And then later on, it was what like Sony do what Nintendo don't and all that kind of stuff
Yeah.
later on, when like I guess what the PS2, 3 era, then that's when things kind of took off, on the competition. And then that's when they started leaning into, the GameCube was actually probably one of their best consoles as far as like both the developer support um and the overall like design. It used the disc, although it was that little tiny disc, but whatever. But I don't know. That's interesting. I think after that it was the Wii, then the Wii U. So
Yeah.
they never really took them a while to get rid of the kid persona or whatever, but
Yeah, it kind of moved on to being a family console with the Wii, and they had like the moms
right.
on there and the old people
The
playing
great.
bowling, and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it really
So,
captured the genre. And now it's like back to a handheld, a console for the gamers. I feel like that's what we're getting out of it. It's no longer something that they're trying to make the Wii crowd get into. And I think they realized with the Wii U, those people were not coming over to that new console because to them, and I remember working at GameStop when the Wii U came out, and they all assumed that it was another peripheral for the Wii. They were like, okay, is
yeah,
this like another controller? No, it's a whole new console. And they wouldn't quite
right,
comprehend that because it just says Wii U on it.
right. Yeah, they need to do what Sony did, and they need to have like a super powerful home console, and then they need to offer the Switch as their portable, powerful on the go console, and then you should be able to link up your Nintendo Switch to the main console, so that way you can use that as like a Wii U kind of peripheral where you can play the games touchscreen, do the whole thing. That would be fantastic, That way everyone gets what they want.
Yeah, I think, and that they were asked about that recently about their Nintendo Switch because they were like, okay, this seems like a home console, but it also seems like a handheld, and they're like, there's no two releases for us in the future where this is it,
Mm,
where this is our handheld and this is our console. So I think the days of like the DS, the 3DS, the Game Boy Advance, it's now the Switch. And it
right.
seems to work out fine because most people play that on the go, which I don't. I barely play the thing. It's more Kelly's console,
Right.
but I don't see
So
myself
she
taking that
plays it on the
around.
go. She's not playing while she's driving, is she?
No, what she does is she'll play it in the bedroom, but she'll take it off the dock and play it like a cell phone or like a Game Boy Advance.
Right.
So I
Yeah,
don't know if
yeah.
that's just more convenient for gamers, but I like having it on the TV, having the big screen, and having like a traditional controller. But I'm definitely in the minority. We also have more Star Wars news this week. More Kathleen Kennedy, as Lucasfilm head Kathleen Kennedy has confirmed in an interview with Empire that there are plans for the sequel trilogy characters. She said, quote, "Certainly those are not characters we're going to forget. They will live on, and those are conversations that are going on with the creative team as well," end quote. And John Boyega famously said, "You're not going to Disney Plus me," when he was asked about if we're going to see more from Finn in the future. I'm kind of surprised that they are, in fact, going to at least have plans to use these characters again. Now, I wouldn't be. It'd make more sense if they showed up in the animated series or in a new animated show. But do you think that we'll see live action or TV or movies or something with these characters?
Um, well, I don't know. It's really hard to say. Everyone has a different opinion on the franchise, and despite what it seems as though might be the majority or the loud minority or whatever we want to call it, it always seems like Disney, and maybe it's just an illusion, but Disney always seems to know what they want to do, and they always seem to double down on their decision, regardless of what people may be saying online or whatever. So I don't know. I mean, they made these characters underneath Kathleen Kennedy's regime, so I would imagine that she would probably want to continue to exploit those characters. Why start all over again? Didn't they renew Kathleen Kennedy's deal
Yeah,
recently?
as of
Yeah,
last week they did. So
right,
they like what she's doing, or I don't know.
right. So I mean, if they want to come up with something new or whatever, because this is the thing, right? Like, I feel like regardless of whether it's the new characters are universally praised or whatever, there is a very strong portion of people who like what they did with the sequel trilogy. So you would think, okay, Kathleen Kennedy is going to stay. The last thing that you want to do is alienate the people who stuck around during the Kathleen Kennedy regime. It's like, if you keep going with what you have, you're more likely to at least hold on to the people who stuck around. I doubt you're going to win back people who kind of let Star Wars go after the sequels, but you know,
I do think you're not going to win them back, but they will be there to watch the next Star Wars thing, because that's
of
something I've
course,
learned
yeah,
about Star
yeah,
Wars fans is as much as they will bitch and whine about the new trilogy or the old trilogy, and now there's new generations coming up who this
right,
sequel trilogy is their Star
is
Wars.
theirs, yeah.
They're still going to be there for that next Star Wars thing. It's
Mhm.
very much like Star Trek fans, even. I know a lot of them don't like the new show, but they'll be there to watch it because it's more Star Trek. They'll take bad Star Trek over no Star Trek. And it's the same with Star Wars.
Yeah,
They'll take bad
and
Star Wars over
DC,
no. Well,
and
some of
yeah,
those, yeah, I don't know about
and
us, but
Marvel.
yeah, the MCU,
Right,
sure.
I'm definitely not in the majority there. I can say that, but yeah, I think that's kind of fandom in general. I think is that like wherever the discussion is, that's where the people are.
I still haven't seen episode 9, I think was the last one. So I don't know if I'd be there for another trilogy or a show. I haven't even seen The Mandalorian or any of that. I don't have Disney Plus, so to me,
I
it's
haven't
like
either. Yeah.
take it or leave it. I don't care. I'm a casual Star Wars fan. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I'm just like, yeah, they're all the
Right.
same. They're all Star Wars. They're all okay. None of them are really terrible. It's as far as what
Yeah.
I've seen. So not a huge deal to me. We got more Ridley Scott news this week, though. Last week he went off on superhero films. Now he's going off on millennials. So he's going right after you
What?
there. Yeah.
I must have missed that.
In spite of the critical acclaim of Ridley Scott's The Last Duel, the movie had little impact at the box office. So it goes to show you once again that you don't appeal to the Rotten Tomatoes critics, because that does not mean that it's going to earn you box office numbers. And yeah, some people are swayed by those things, but in this case, and I do want to talk about The Last Duel, and I have my thoughts on why I don't think it performed too well. But Ridley said, quote, "I think what it boils down to, what we've got today are the audiences who were brought up on these fucking cell phones. The millennials do not ever want to be taught anything unless you're told it on a cell phone. This is a broad stroke, but I think we're dealing with it right now with Facebook. This is a misdirection that has happened where it's given the wrong kind of confidence to the latest generation, I think. End quote. He then went on to say that he thought Disney did a very good job of marketing the movie and that he stands by it regardless of the underperformance at the box office. So before we go into his other quote on what he thought of the project, because it was a Fox project before Disney bought it. Disney probably would never have put up the money to make this movie. What do you think about him blaming millennials for The Last Duel not doing well?
Well, it's not necessarily, it's not an op-ed from Martin Scorsese. That's for sure. And Martin is definitely a lot more articulate when he's talking about, his opinions and whatnot. But the thing is that I'm very sympathetic to these older, established, traditional creators, because they although they always sound, and regardless of whether they sound like this or not, people are always going to call them the old man shaking fist at cloud or whatever. Right. They have a certain insight onto their cinema that no one today has. And I think when what he's talking about, he said it very crudely, but there is a certain attention span element to that. A lot of people can't even go to a blockbuster movie without, talking or, or making disruptions or without being able to focus. And a lot of times, the movies nowadays are very made for people who don't want to focus on details and pick apart a movie and really, it's more about the flashing colors and the bright colors and flashing lights and whatnot, which is certainly true. So, I mean, I have to basically translate for him, but I do understand there's an element to what he's saying that is very true. Millennials is a very wide bracket. So to say that is certainly going to draw some criticism toward your claim, but the general cell phone using, instant gratification youth that's coming up in especially the West, but all over the world now, is definitely an element in a very abstract way.
Yeah, I think you brought up an important point there where millennials are 25 to about early 40s. So I think he means the Generation Z, I think is what they're calling them now. Zoomers or something. So
newer millennials and probably your Gen Z. Yeah.
And looking at this movie, I went and I saw it in theaters, and this isn't one that I watched because I'm like, oh, I saw that commercial and it looked great. I saw on Twitter that people were like, this is Ben's new movie. This is Ridley Scott's new movie. And I'm like, oh, great. I like both those guys. I'm glad I saw this tweet because otherwise I probably wouldn't have known about it. And my brother told me about it too. He's like, this is coming out and it's good. I went and saw it, liked it. But this is not a movie that after seeing it, I can't figure out a way that you can market this because it's not action packed. It has very strong actors. It's got beautiful sets, beautiful directing from Ridley Scott, and it's got star power. Maybe that's the way I'd do it. I'd be like Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Adam Driver. Like those are the big hitters here. Throw them up on the screen like crazy because this is not an action movie. It's not Gladiator. It's not Blade Runner. It's not Aliens. So it's tough. It was a tough sell for sure. And I honestly didn't expect it. For example, House of Gucci just came out, and that has way more marketability because you have Lady Gaga in there, and people are going out to see it for the actors. So I think they should have kind of done the same here with Last
Also,
Duel.
Gucci is a very popular brand.
True,
so
very true.
To put a drama behind a very, very popular brand that a lot of young people are familiar with and identify with, I think that I mean they can't afford, but but they definitely
ones, yeah.
But so I definitely think, and I think that the marketing for The Last Duel, like, I didn't see the movie, but I saw a lot of the trailers, and the trailers always seem to kind of be like, I had enough like insight and I could see like what the themes of the movie were, like just watching the trailer. But I also could see that they are very much marketing the trailer around this duel, right? So like they wouldn't actually show you this duel, but of course the title plus the way that they marketed the how they put the trailer together made you feel as though it was building anticipation for the namesake of the movie.
Yeah.
So if you were to like go into that movie and be like, oh man, I can't wait to watch The Last Duel, you could very well be disappointed. Or if you heard a review that said, oh, there wasn't very much action in it, then you probably would avoid it.
And here's what he had to say about Disney supposedly doing a decent job marketing it. He said, quote, "That's the call Fox made. We all thought it was a terrific script and we made it. You can't win all the time. I've never had one regret on any movie I've ever made. Nothing. I learned very early on to be your own critic," end quote. We talked earlier how his latest movie is House of Gucci. It's currently in theaters. I don't think this movie would have been made under Disney's watch. It's again, it's one of those that they inherited from the Fox buyout. So I think they're just kind of letting, like, yeah, releasing them, doing a light job of. I don't think they marketed it well personally. So I kind of disagree with Ridley, and I know he wants to blame it on the audience. But I am at least glad and a little bit sad that maybe this movie wouldn't have been made. Maybe he would have gone to another studio and they would have made it, Universal, Paramount, whomever. But to me, there's also that shot of like now with one less studio like Fox, there's one less shot at trying to make these movies. And I know we have streaming. I know there's tons of options still. But to people like Ridley Scott, you'd want to have that huge budget, big studio behind it,
Right.
big name actors, and then launch it. And we have, yeah. Did you have anything else to add to this one?
Well, yeah, a little bit. In regards to like them releasing movies through 20th Century Studios, I think that we will get more movies like The Last Duel, and we will get more movies like House of Gucci. I don't see any reason why Disney won't release the movie. Now, I think the biggest question is how much say will they have over what is in the movie itself? That's something that's a lot more hard to put your finger on, and it's a lot. You really can't. There's no way to actually say, yeah, this movie probably changed these ways. There's no way for us to say that, but I think it's a much more realistic kind of like thought is like, okay, Disney will probably release movies like this. They'll probably do Aliens. They probably will do something in that franchise, but they're probably going to focus more on PG-13 movies that focus more on being able to be expanded upon, do spin-offs, market it, make toys. They're going to focus more on those kinds of things. So, and less about the cinema that maybe we're familiar with.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're gonna get ready for comedian aliens. Get ready for it's gonna be like that last Predator movie that came out from Shane Black. Did you see that one?
Yeah, I didn't know.
Oh my, good, because I went in Shane Black, awesome. I like the guy, and then I came out like, what the fuck? This was literally MCU Predator. There was jokes all over the place, and apparently there were a ton of reshoots or rewrites, so it wasn't even what he really wanted to make. But
movies are getting funner.
Yeah, brighter, funner, and that's exactly what Predator was.
Yeah.
More from the world of Ridley Scott. He did confirm that a Blade Runner TV show is in the works, and this was through an interview with the BBC. It is going to be a live action series. He said, quote, we have already written the pilot for Blade Runner and the Bible, so we're already presenting Blade Runner as a TV show the first 10 hours, end quote. So that's kind of unexpected to me, because the last one didn't do great, although it has a great following. People kind of discovered it, the one by Denis Villeneuve. But it seems like a franchise that a studio would be like, yeah, the name's huge, but do we want to put a big thing behind it after the last one didn't seem to do too well?
I'm not surprised. Blade Runner, recently they've actually made 2 different anime. They made an OVA, Blade Runner, and then they're actually in conjunction with Adult Swim and Crunchyroll are making a series that comes out every Saturday called Blade Runner Black Lotus, like a CG animation, which I'm watching, and so far it's pretty good, like a mystery set in the Blade Runner franchise. So they've seemed to be very open about even extending Blade Runner into anime and TV and things like that. So that making a live action television show doesn't seem to be far from their current path with Blade Runner.
I know that the comics have still continued. They've opened up that lore, and it did okay when it was releasing. They've kind of re not relaunched it, but once an arc ends, they'll have a new one like 2049, 2099, Blade Runner, and there's like a prequel. Blade Runner Origins was one of the series, so they don't have an ongoing thing with it. They'll just kind of keep releasing miniseries to kind of keep that world alive. But I mean, I'll check it out. It's not depending on what it shows up on. I really enjoyed the last one, but I haven't been, keeping up on like you said, the recent stuff like the anime series Black Lotus. Yeah, it says right here debuted on Adult Swim earlier this month, and looks like most likely maybe FX, maybe it'll be on that same. What'd you say it was on again? Crunchyroll.
So Adult Swim and Crunchyroll, it's a joint project with them. So you can probably watch on Adult Swim's website, like maybe like the last episode. You can always see like the previous one. That's how they usually do it. And then after the whole thing is out, you could probably watch everything. Like they have Ghost in the Shell, Standalone Complex, the original Ghost in the Shell TV series on there. You can watch the full thing for free with ads. So they'll probably do something similar like that for this too.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I'll more Blade Runner is not necessarily a bad thing, right? before we
Yeah, no.
Before we go into what I think we're both really excited to jump in on, which is Arcane, we do have this month's What's New on HBO Max. These are the December 2021 highlights. So going through the full list here, and then we'll jump back and forth on some things that maybe you and I are going to revisit or that we particularly enjoyed, might recommend to the Brokehead Core out there. We've got Interview with the Vampire, The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, The Mask, Mortal Kombat, that's the 1995 one, the good one. Mortal Kombat Battle of the Realms, which is the latest animated movie. No Country for Old Men, Seven, The Matrix Resurrections, and Young Justice Season 4. Again, these are just the highlights, stuff that I picked out that I really enjoyed myself. You can find the full list online, but anything here, what sticks out to you first?
Seven, mostly because of its iconic namesake. Yeah. No Country for Old Man, old man, old man. Yeah, No Country for Martin Scorsese. I mean, yeah. So you did a lot of good picks here. Young Justice Season 4, man. I stopped after. So they had the original on, what was it? The original Young
Cartoon
Justice
Network.
came out. Was it on Cartoon Network?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they had, because I remember they had it like on a pay behind a paywall on a certain service for a bit too.
It was on DC Universe, and then it merged over to HBO Max.
Okay, yeah. I watched I think season 3, and then 4. I don't think I watched. I kind of, the quality went down in my opinion. I don't know what. It really went down, and the writing is not great, and I just, it lacks the edge that it had in the beginning. Also, I feel it doesn't really feel like it, because I like Young Justice because it felt like a more adult Teen Titans.
Sure. Yeah, it
So I
definitely
really,
did.
yeah. So, but it, no.
And I think that the better Teen Titans is still Teen Titans Go. Like if we're making that comparison, but Young Justice, I remember when that first came out, it was very well written. I enjoyed it. The animation was solid. Then they canceled that. They also canceled Green Lantern, the animated series, years ago. Kelly and I talked about it here on the show and how they should renew.
It's funny you mention that because one of the voice actors who is in that show is also in the show that we're going to talk about.
Really? Which one? Go ahead and tell me.
Silco. It's so let's see here. It's let's see here. Silco. Jason Spizak.
And who's he play on Young Justice or Green Lantern?
On Green Lantern, he plays. Let's see here. I'm on Green Lantern. He plays Hal Jordan. No.
I was gonna say they sound very different.
No.
Talented fucking.
No. Yeah. I'm not sure. I'd have to. There's a bunch of stuff on this IMDb, and I'm not like fluent in going through here, but I just know it because I have a friend of mine who's a big fan of this show, and he told me that he recognized immediately Jason Spizak's name, and got really excited about watching the show because he really liked that voice actor. And it's funny because I had already seen the first 3 episodes, which we'll talk more about.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh my god, Soko's my favorite character as
Yes.
well. Like I'm like I totally get it. His voice actor makes that character so good. So yeah,
But when we were talking about how these shows got canceled, Kelly loved Young Justice, but I was like, renew Green Lantern the animated series. That's the shit I want to see. I want to see
yeah,
the Razor become a Blue Lantern, find Aya. It really left on a cliffhanger. You see the Blue Lantern ring kind of fly off towards the camera and into space, so it's telling you that he's going to become a Blue Lantern. And we got one episode of fucking Sinestro voiced by Ron Perlman, and I'm like, that's my fucking favorite Green Lantern is Sinestro. There's so much here, and everyone was busy pushing for Young Justice. They got Young Justice, so I got a
yeah,
resentment here of like, but Green Lantern was way better. It was
yeah.
probably more
No,
expensive to produce though.
I feel like because that was such that was a minute ago that show came out, and I feel as though I've watched it. And if I haven't watched it, I can't believe it because there's not like a single DC thing I've never watched previous to like what I can't even remember. Previous to like Justice League, like pre Justice League, I watched pretty much any DC TV show, cartoon, all that. So, but I feel like I have seen it before. But yeah, that's a throwback for sure.
Interview with the Vampire was one that I watched as a teen, and I'm like, this is a good movie. Like, no, I went and revisited it, and it's fun, but it's not like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't put that in my top 50 or 100 movies of all time. But I don't know why I really enjoyed it back then, too, is it was a different type of vampire movie. There wasn't like mass killing or a hunter or anything. It's told from the vampire's perspective, which is kind of unique as far as movies are concerned. Went back and read the book, saw the differences. The book was a lot gayer with the characters, whereas the movie was like it was like, no, there's not really a thing there between Lestat and Brad Pitt. I forgot his character's name, but in the book it's pretty obvious that there was a relationship there. So I'm seeing those differences, and I kind of want to go back again because it's been years since I've seen Interview with the Vampire. I showed it to Kelly after she was all about Twilight, and I'm like, those aren't really vampires. Let me show you a different vampire movie. Showed her Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah. It seemed like those are vampires are really getting popular in Japan right now.
Really.
At least amongst anime this season. So for me to make a sweeping statement like that is incorrect. But they have like a handful of shows that are all vampire centric, and then the next season coming up, there's also several shows coming out vampire centric too. So it's really strange. A lot of the people in the community are talking about like, man, like vampires are really booming in Japanese anime right now. So I wonder if maybe this is kind of a coordinated attack here on HBO's part.
It could be. And I really wanted to put Mortal Kombat 1995. Let me ask you, do you enjoy Mortal Kombat 1995? Do you think it's a good movie?
I have only seen GIFs.
You've
I've only
never
seen
seen
like
it? Wow.
I've never seen it. No. I know it's a cult classic, but I was never like the one who's like, oh, I need to see it because it's a cult classic. It looked bad and I didn't watch it.
Oh,
know.
man.
But everyone was always telling me like, oh, it's the good kind of bad. It's like, it's really wacky and goofy and something that they would only have created at that time. It's like very much a product of its time.
Super 90s. And I still stand by it. I'm like, it's not even so bad. It's good. I'm like, I think it's a good movie. Like, it's legitimately, like, I enjoy it a lot. No Country for Old Men. Yeah, go ahead.
Who directs that? That's,
that I don't know.
what's his name? Yeah, it's the guy who does the original Mortal Kombat movie was the same guy who does the Resident Evil movies.
No, that's not the same director. I know who you're thinking of.
It's not?
I don't believe so. No.
Okay.
No, if you want to Google that one, but I know who you're talking about.
You're right. It's not. No, it is. Yeah, it is. Paul W.S. Anderson.
Who did he's the one who's married to Mia Jovovich?
Yep,
Are you
it's
sure?
him.
Wow.
100. IMDb. Yeah, I know this because lately, because that Monster Hunter movie came out, he directed that. Yeah. And people were talking about whether he could. Yeah, I think so as well. and people were talking about whether he could make a video game adaptation. And I'm like, well, I mean, he's the only one who's ever made a good video,
Yeah,
you
several of
know?
them.
Exactly, exactly. So there's a lot of controversy about that. I'm not sure if you kind of tuned into that, but
No, no, I
um,
didn't.
it's yeah. I mean, so people don't like him
Because
for
of
several reasons.
okay.
Well, I guess because they feel like he really fell off the wagon with the Resident Evil franchise. One, and two, he bothered making a Monster Hunter movie, which is a huge Monster Hunter movie fandom, and they're like, oh, like we don't want him doing it. And then three, there's some people who also really are holding a grudge against him because of an accident that happened on set with a stunt woman, which is
Oh,
serious and legitimate. But people feel like he's also like culpable for that situation, being that it was on his set. So um, there's a lot of just like kind of controversy around him right now.
gotcha. Well,